In memory of Nathan Webb. Nathan's mama, Leah, asked me to make her a memory quilt after seeing some photos I posted. I met with her, asked about her son, and she told me all about him. Lots of things. One of my favorite things was how he would answer the phone. Webb's mortuary. You stab him, we slab him. She told me of his love for the rodeo, his family, and all of the things he liked. She talked about some flamingo shorts he wore on vacation and how it surprised her that he would wear them. Those flamingo shorts stuck with me too, and so did Webb's mortuary. I asked Leah for a letter from Nathan, something with lots of words. That way I would have all the letters I need to be able to construct his greeting. Leah gave me his journal. I photographed letters and sets of letters, and I made his telephone joke into a treasure, using Nathan's very own handwriting. I edited the handwriting with some software. I emailed them to myself and put them through Adobe Illustrator. I learned to use Illustrator in college and never imagined that I would be using it in order to make a quilt. A gift that Nathan had given Leah I wanted to include in the quilt, but it had some shadows, so I had to get rid of those. The first time I ever used AI, I asked for a stabby flamingo. That way, I had an appropriate and fun background to use for his sign. I began deconstructing the shirts the way that I normally would for any t-shirt quilt, removing the sleeves and removing the front from the back. Once I was finished, I ironed the t-shirts and decided which part I was going to use. I stabilized the t-shirts so that I would be able to sew them together easily. I cut out the blocks according to the size of their emblems, and I stacked them in a pile. There were several button-up shirts that I wanted to use in the quilt. In order to give it an interesting effect, I decided that I wanted to cut them a little bit different than the t-shirts. I glued the pockets down, I glued the buttons closed, and I decided how big the blocks were going to be for these kind of shirts. Taking the liberty with creative license, I decided as a design element to use the sleeves of two of the shirts instead of the pockets. I prepared the sleeves and I glued down the pleats. That way when it comes time to sew, they don't come up. The layout of the quilt can often be challenging, so I began to draft my potential spaces. Once I found where I needed to fill, I cut the shirts I'd set aside for this very purpose to fill in my spots. Once I'd received my custom fabric in the mail, I prepared the blocks in order to blend with the quilt. There's lots of math and figuring to block placement, so I went back to the drawing board to ensure each space was full. I wanted to include wolves, like Nathan and Leah's mother-son tattoo. I continued to cut pieces of the shirts for the available remaining spaces for the quilt and put them into their place. Once I had the blocks placed, I sewed them together. This is just a small glimpse of the sewing the blocks together in order to make the quilt. Once I was done sewing, I would send it to the long arm quilter who would put in the stitches. I chose to have Dreamcatcher stitches. Once it returned from the long arm quilter, it had to be bound. A quilt this heavy takes a long time in order to make it through the machine. The very final step in completing the quilt was adding a custom label. Today was the 1-year anniversary of Nathan's death. There was a memorial for him when people who loved him came to release balloons. Leah spoke to the crowd and talked about how much she loved him and how much he loved everyone. She read a poem, and then it was time to release the balloons. It was a surprise with Biggin to present the quilt to her today. She didn't know it was coming, and it was a big surprise. Leah talked about how she had been waiting for this t-shirt quilt that I had made for her. She didn't know it was coming today. She was really happy with it and noticed right away the Webb's mortuary. You stab 'em, we slab 'em. This quilt has been more than a month in the making to bring this mama a treasure for her heart until she meets her heart's treasure once again.